So welcome once again, everyone, to Global Perspectives and our opening keynote. My name is Miriam Niehaus. I'm the head of programs at the International Civil Society Center. And for the benefit of visually impaired people, I am a white woman wearing a black blazer. Today, we want to talk about transforming civil society futures, and I'm really pleased to have two sector thought leaders with me on the call, along, of course, with all of you wonderful participants. Nana Afadjinu, who is the Executive Director of the West Africa Civil Society Institute, and Wolfgang Jammann, who's the Executive Director of the International Civil Society Center. So welcome to both of you. Wonderful to have you here.
Thank you, Miriam.
So we are talking about transforming civil society futures. I want to kick us off by finding out from you how pessimistic or optimistic you are about these. And so I would ask you to just hold up 1 to 5 fingers into the camera, 5 meaning that you are very optimistic about the future. Can I see your hands? Ooh. That's a 4, Nana, and that's a 4, Wolfgang. And we'll also see a couple of fingers from the audience. That's also lovely. Nana, let me start with you. What makes you so optimistic?
Thank you very much, Miriam, and the ICSC for this invitation. Let me, for the benefit of our colleagues online who are visually impaired. I am a Black woman in a colorful top. So, Miriam, I am optimistic because I think even though development is a continuum, there will be discrepancies because contexts differ and perspectives differ. And depending on where you find yourself in that continuum, you may find things differently. There are definitely challenges, but one could see those very same challenges as opportunities to bring about the needed transformation or abandon ship completely. For me, I choose the former. I really believe that the challenges that we have could actually, they are opportunities for us to bring about the transformation. So I see a future for civil society and a bright one as that.
That is very encouraging on this, at least over here in Berlin, gray November morning. Wolfgang, you're equally optimistic. What brings you to that assessment?
Well, that's correct. Thank you, Miriam, and greetings to everyone. I'm also for those who are visually impaired. I'm a white male wearing a blue shirt. I'm calling in from Berlin, from a relatively gray environment right now. Yes, I'm as optimistic as Nana, and I have to say I wouldn't be in this business if I were not an optimist by nature, because I, like many of us, believe in a better world and that we can contribute to this. But this is more than hope that I'm quoting. I think I've been long enough in the trade to see that there's change is possible, and there's a willingness to change, and there's a willingness to adapt to the challenges. And yes, it's a difficult time right now, but it's not the first time that has been difficult for many of us. So I think we'll be able to cope.
And you say we're optimists by trade, probably a lot of us here in this group. So that, of course, gives us some wind underneath our wings. But Wolfgang, let me ask you this. You already mentioned the challenges that we have going on at the moment. How do you currently see the need and the balance between transforming as a sector, but also keeping on top of those challenges and delivering as organizations currently do, rather as business as usual? Isn't transformation almost a luxury ambitions in these days?
No, it's not. I mean, we're talking about futures in this conference, and as we all know, the future is going to be the present very soon. So we better get our heads around the futures quickly, because we need to transform as we also continue. You called it business as usual. I wouldn't qualify this so negative. I think as we continue trying to make a difference through our work. But yes, transformation is necessary. And the future of civil society, I think, in my mind, is determined. We don't have a glass bowl, of course, but it's determined by two main clusters, if you wish. The first cluster is the context in which we operate, and of course also the way we operate. And while the context might feel a bit grim, we all know we're in polycrisis, there's attacks on civic space, we've had to deal with the corona situation, we have huge problems like inequality, but also we're seeing quite encouraging and interesting positive developments. If you just look at the global scene, Bolsonaro is out. Putin is not going anywhere with his war, and probably also with the repressive society in Russia. There's the protests in Iran fighting for women and human rights. And even China there seems to be some cracks in this wall. I mean, I wouldn't call it a momentum, but there's also, I think, a lot of signs that the global context, the geopolitics, is not going completely into the wrong direction. Also, I think in societies, some of the difficult and sometimes even toxic debates around the values that we have moved to a much more constructive paths to overcoming some of the old practices that we know, and the bad stuff around racism and colonized heritage. But we have moved to a quite constructive path to overcoming those and discussing also binding values like solidarity and partnerships. And the civil society organizations, at least the ones I have insight in, yes, they do struggle to cope with the transformation, to meet future demands. There's many reasons for this. There's inertia, there's overload, capacity issues, but that doesn't mean they won't try and they won't succeed in change while maintaining the operational capability, which after all is a big challenge in itself. And I have to say, we need to, and we will collectively help each other to cope with future demands. As I said, I've seen personally many transformations in the sector. We did talk about this a couple of weeks ago during the Ringo Festival. So my judgment is, I would hope, is rather based on evidence than on hope for the ability of the sector to stay future-proof. The second cluster, if you allow me, is the relevance and the impact that we need to have, and it's a cluster that matters a lot, because the moment we lose relevance and the moment we don't make a difference for the people and the community we work with, we will have lost the battle for the future. So yes, overcoming the old stereotypes, the business models, the old practices is all important, but we must stay notably relevant for the communities we work with. And there's some interesting things going on, particularly right now in the humanitarian sector, the work in Ukraine, which is showing how we all struggle and try to become part of a new reality, which Ukrainian civil society articulating the demands, and at the same time, we're trying to help humanitarian needs. And there's some quite uncomfortable debates going on what does it mean for us in terms of neutrality, in terms of giving up power and letting those be in the driving seat that need to be. So I'd say the dynamics are there, but we need to stay sharp, of course.
Thank you, Wolfgang, for that nuanced reflection. Nana, let me turn to you with a bit of a different question, moving on from some of the geopolitics that Wolfgang has already sketched out. What main trends do you see that affect the well-being of the people of the planet? And the more important question in this context is, of course, how do we as civil society organizations or as organized civil society step up to meet those challenges? What is needed there?
Thank you very much, Miriam. I also have looked at it from two main clusters. And it was interesting that Wolfgang gave it that frame. But first, and because we are looking at context, I think there's a global context. Wolfgang has already talked about the geopolitics. To a large extent, it has affected the way civil society, particularly from where I sit in the global south, it has affected the way we have engaged, because you could talk about human rights, for example, and the kind of geopolitical system that we used to have that supported, to a large extent, human rights and social justice. That has shifted. And it has also affected the support that is given to civil society actors working on these social justice issues in the global south. So the geopolitics globally does have an effect. The other area is climate change, which is something that is a global issue that is affecting each and every one of us. And in many of our countries, it's really affecting the way society behaves and the way they engage with each other, and the politics in different countries. In a number of our countries, it has created conflicts, between different groups. Technology is another one. Globally, we can talk about the technology advancement and how, when you look at the global south, we do have very little of this advancement when it comes to the access, affordability of ordinary people to work. Sorry, I have a bad cough, so I'm going to manage that. To work using technology, and the fact that it has really affected the way we can engage, because we are in the the fourth industrial revolution. Everything literally is run by technology. And so if you do not have it, it has affected the way you engage. The health crisis, the pandemic, and the way it hits many of us so hard, economically, socially, and has affected our politics as well. Now we have a global economic crisis, and many of our societies are really suffering. I mean, the ordinary person in West Africa that I know very well is really struggling in this situation. And so civil society is working in these spaces, the inequality, the discrimination, and the structural racism within the international development system itself is also another area that affects the work that we do. On the national level, which is the second cluster, in a number of our countries, we have bad governance, where you have rule by law instead of rule of law. And so you can actually have governments changing constitutions so that they can even, have a longer term in power. So using the law against the people, going against constitutionalism. There's insecurity in a number of our countries where you have conflict, you have terrorist attacks. That is a major issue. Corruption is a huge problem for us. And that includes multilateral corruption, illicit financial flows, monies that belong to the people flowing out of the country, state capture, where you have people or groups of people that are not elected, but they are the ones who control the government machinery and their decisions. And so it's difficult for people even to engage these people and persons. And civil society over the years has not been given the strength that is needed to strengthen their institutions. So you have weakened civil society, and COVID brought that out. It exposed that so in a major way. And then we have the issue around civic space constraints, the restraint of freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, freedom of association, using various means, including policy, law, regulations, and institutions of state. So what do we need to do? Civil society needs to step up. We need to build solidarity and strengthen our voice, because there's no way that we can do this alone and in silos. And when I say civil society, I'm not talking only about NGOs. I'm talking about the different groupings. And now there are new groups within civil society that have come up. In addition to NGOs, we have the old traditional ones like faith-based organizations, like some student associations, like professional associations that existed. But there are new ones, some of the social movements that have come up, some of the online activism that goes on. We need to connect. We need to strengthen working together, and we need to build trust with citizens. And particularly when it comes to NGOs, I would say that we have, to some extent, in some of our countries, we have failed to make those connections with communities so that communities actually own what it is that we do and feel a part of it. And we are accountable to them, not only to those who give us money. So those are some of the challenges that we need to work on. And we need to ensure that we are strong on different levels to enable us engage effectively. Our institutions, our knowledge capacity, our partnerships, we need to strengthen these. And we have to be accountable and transparent and have strong allies and equip ourselves adequately with the needed tools, as well as working diligently on our resourcing to enable our sustainable engagement. So these are some of the things that I think we need to be doing. And we have to take advantage of the current momentum for transformation in international development, shifting power, localization, decolonizing development, and making sure that all of us have an equal, respected say in how we develop in our countries and together globally. So that is what I would like to say, to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Nana, for that overview and for giving us those 5 big challenges, but also the way forward. Wolfgang, before I come to you with my next question, would you have anything to add to either the trends or the way forward?
No, I mean, I would fully subscribe. It's a long to-do list, of course, that we have ahead of us, but I would fully support both the emphasis and also the need to adjust to some of those new challenges. When you talk about organized civil society, it's not by nature that we will be able to deal with all of the above. Whether it's big trends like climate change and the like, or whether it's new types of partnership connecting to social movements and the like. I mean, when we talk about adaptation and transformation, it's not happening per se, or just because we think it's a good idea, because it's exactly needed to address both the big trends and to adjust our way of working and operating. And when you look at how do we deal with this complexity on a more abstract level, it's the ability to be able to deal with the unknown. We've had a good publication last year, which our Scanning the Horizon group at the center was facilitating, helping us to deal with this turbulent world, which basically means we don't know what we don't know, and we have to sharpen our understanding of the world around us. If you want me to emphasize at least one of the trends that Nana has already mentioned that I feel is running away from us is digitalization. Yes, we're able and we're trying to deal with all of this, but civil society maybe is kind of good to explore its benefits through communication and information, but we're missing out on what does it do to inequality, to social dynamics, to the values, the way we talk to each other. And yes, there's a few organizations out there, NetHope, Tactical Tech, the center itself. We're trying to help the sector, but I think there needs to be a much bigger and better understanding of the use of this world and all its implications for civil society.
Thanks, Wolfgang. And in fact, later we'll have one panel session on this very topic on inclusive digital development. So do tune in for that one as well if you're interested in the topic. But to move us back a little bit to what Nana was also flagging, the solidarity aspect, I think there is a lot of talk these days about what I think you've termed the magic formula, local leadership and global solidarity. Is that what we are aiming towards, and what does that mean concretely also from your perspective as the International Civil Society Center?
I think the narrative and the ambition, locally led and globally connected, is just wonderful. But I also think that we don't think enough about what it means concretely. So I think the question is a good one. So when you talk about local leadership, and Nana, you might be even more qualified than me to speak about this, but are we clear about what kind of local leadership is expected and what is conducive? You talked about bad governance, you talked about corruption. This is not limited to leaders. This is happening throughout the societies. I mean, Ukraine, again, to come back to this, has been the second most corrupt country in Europe, even prior to the war. So you can't wish this away. You have to deal with it. And the kind of local leadership that you expect has to come with high ambitions, high standards, values, and the like. Also, we need to make sure that those invisible power strings that will be there. You know, you can't wish them away. They come from donors, they come from those who hold resources. We need to make sure that those become visible, that those don't hold us back, and don't get ignored. But I would still say building on the strengths of local leadership and putting confidence in it is important. It's not just an ethical, the right thing to do. I think we need to acknowledge this is where the strength and the future of the sector is. The global connectedness and solidarity is a bit more difficult, I would say, because what does it mean? Does it mean, you know, we meet at the UN, we meet at conferences like the one today, or is the ambition bigger? And does it include more intentional knowledge sharing, distribution of tasks, and not seeing collaboration as a burden, but as an opportunity? Yeah, let me stop here. There's so much to say, but well, Nana, we've lost her video, but I'm sure she can speak even more competently to this. Thank you.
Yes, it would be great, Nana, to hear from you how you see that formula and what it means for you as WACC.
Thank you very much, Miriam. Yes, I believe it is a critical part of the magic formula, but it's not the only part of it. Actually, I think that we have some fundamental trust issues that have to be addressed. For me, that is a major one of the key challenges that we have. And for WACC, we believe that when we have a stronger civil society sector, one that, you know, you have strong institutions, knowledgeable institutions that are able to build those partnerships based on that knowledge and an environment that enables them to work. You look at capacities and you look at accountability. And when you have that kind of strong civil society sector, that in itself brings some kind of boldness and confidence in engaging in the space. And I think that for organizations working from the global south, that is one of the key things that WACC wants to work in. We are talking a lot about civil society organizations. We are talking about localization. We are talking about shifting power. And some of the questions that are asked is, do we have the capacity to, if we are looking at localization, do we have the capacity? We believe we do, but we must demonstrate that as well. And so it is important to have that strong civil society sector. The other one, sorry, is the documentation, the valorization and amplification of knowledge and capacity from the global south. Because it's important, we are looking at alternatives. We are saying there's a need to transform the sector. We are saying there's knowledge in the global south. We are saying we have what it takes to engage on an equal footing and be given that respect and trusted to engage with different partners across the globe. Now, we have to also present that, you know, show that, demonstrate that, and we need to document what it is that we have. We need to show that it has value and amplify it. So that is also another area that WACC is very keen in supporting. And we fully support building solidarity. Now, solidarity not only globally, but continentally, as well as nationally. So strengthening our collaboration, our networking, and our peer learning. Because there's so much that we can learn from each other, south to south, south to north, north to south. But those connections have to be made deliberately. Like Wolfgang mentioned, it has to be a deliberate attempt to enable those connections. I don't think that some of the successes that were chalked at the last COP event could have happened without global solidarity. And I believe that is one example to show that if we work together, connecting at the national, continental, and global level, we can actually drive change. True transformation. Yes, some of the commitments have been made. We have to continue to make sure that they follow through, but it's there. Then we are also working on protecting and promoting civic space. For us, that is key. We cannot, as civil society, do anything, even talking about solidarity, global or otherwise, without having the space and the environment. And then building resource and resourcing capabilities locally as well as internationally. So for us, local philanthropy is key, and working on that as well as connecting to global philanthropy. But not only financing, but also looking at technology, looking at human and material resources. So how can we share the knowledge that we have across the different global spaces? Finance, technology, human, and material resource. You know, and this has to be thought through. So those are some of the things. And I think once you accept and acknowledge that it is not only one part of the world that has the knowledge to share with the other, to strengthen the other, but different parts of the world can strengthen in different ways. I think that we can work it out. But it's just that we have a current mindset which has affected the way we have engaged. So these are some of the challenges, yeah.
Thanks a lot, Nana. And I think you've sketched out wonderful pathways for all of us going forward. And I think most of us here, if you were at a 1 or 2 optimistic level at the beginning, hopefully now you're at a higher level, thanks to both Nana and Wolfgang for also sketching out a couple of the key ingredients that are needed for us as a sector.